right, well, hello. And I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Trusso for a new episode of my interview series. Dr. Trusso is my current professor in HUP 215, which is Philosophy of Love. I've known you, Dr. Trusso, for over a year now as an advisor also from our PTK chapter at LaGuardia. As part of my assignment here, we will set our focus, however, on our discussion on the beautiful philosophy of love. So good afternoon, Professor, and thanks for taking your time with me.
Sandra, thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be part of your podcast.
So am I. Thank you so much. My first question would be, my introductory question is, what brought you to philosophy?
Well, interestingly enough, I came to philosophy through religion. When I was a teenager, I had a lot of I had a lot of questions and no answers. So I had very difficult questions to ask, and I found a place that would answer those questions, and that was church. So I actually converted to a different denomination of Christianity. I joined a church. In that church, there was a study group, and that's where I first learned about Descartes. So my first introduction to philosophy was in a very fundamentalist context. And when I went to college and began to major in philosophy, I realized that when I was searching for answers, what I was really looking for was a different way to explore ideas. And so luckily, I was able to replace a very dogmatic, fundamentalist conception of reality with one that was more about the process of answering questions, of asking questions, listening to how other people answer those questions, and then to put pressure on each of those ideas so as not to necessarily convert to one of those answers, or to say one of those answers I will adopt and that will be the way I live my life unquestioningly.
So in a way, you want to ask a question in order to find some type of truth, because that's what I'm trying to do here right now.
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we got similar background in that case. That's great. So, well, let's talk about love then, because that's what we do. We are having this beautiful class, Philosophy of Love, that I just can recommend to anybody interested in love, which is a very wide concept, and we're trying to narrow this down right now. And to start with, I want to ask you, what is your definition of love, if you have
well,
one?
that's a really hard one to define love. And if we want to talk about Plato's Symposium and the way Plato answers that question, it would be of to commune with the form of beauty itself. And how do you do that? How do you truly understand the nature of beauty and truly understand the nature of love? Through a gradual ascent. And so in Plato's Symposium, the character Diotima, who is said to be the one who taught Socrates the art of love, which Socrates claims is the only thing he knows about. The only thing I know is the art of love, which, by the way, he never mentions anything in the other dialogues that he specifically says, I know about this thing. But he says, oh, I know about love. I know about love through Diotima. And the way that she taught Socrates about the art of love was that it's a gradual process, like each rung on the ladder is going to expand and widen your perception of what beauty is.
So I guess you talk about the famous ladder of love in in Plato's Symposium. Just to introduce the audience to that concept, the ladder of love is, please correct me if I'm wrong, is based on 3 steps to gain perfect love. It starts with a physical aspect, and physical probably means the 5 senses as we know it. We know the 5 senses: seeing, touching, smelling, tasting, and hearing even, right? Like beautiful voice can be lovable. And but Plato doesn't just stop there. He wants to go beyond that and says, well, that's just a starting point. That's maybe shallow. It's not just the right, that's not the true love. It can be a starting point. So you can go a step further. And now you maybe talk about mental or, mind, or some people want to call it a soul, to connect with, maybe habits on a daily basis that you can appreciate as a conjunction between, well, we would have to say two people, but he goes even further and say, well, that's not it there. So you go to a third step, which, maybe can be translated into a transcendent, whatever that means, because we just don't know. That's like that last funk of electricity. Not like it's already hard enough to get the first step of the ladder both ways. It's easy to appreciate somebody on a physical level one way. To receive it back is like doubles, or like halves the chances of, this coming into place. No, we go mental, and now we go to a whole transcendent space, which, seems to be tough to achieve. Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, what I like about the ladder of love is that, first of all, we have all experienced a first crush, right? A first love, that first physical experience of love in our own bodies and with another body. And we've also all experienced this idea of being attracted to beauty, whether it's beauty in that person that we first have a crush on, beauty of our lovers, beauty of our friends. And then what Plato does is he says, what is it that truly makes that person beautiful? What is it that you're truly attracted to? You're not just attracted to that person's body, you're also attracted to their mind. And then what else can we find? Where else can we find beauty in this world? The ideas that are created by humans. And so on the ladder, you start with like this idea of like your first crush, your first love, and then you move to recognizing the beauty in that one person expands your world so that you see that in all people, there is the potential to have these beautiful conversations and create ideas together. And then the next step on the ladder is being attracted to the beauty of humankind's creations, like politics, religion, society, myths. So things that are literally generated from the human mind.
But the
And we find beauty in
criticism,
that.
right,
Mm-hmm.
the criticism or the question would be, isn't the opposite sometimes just as attractive as just agreeing with, your partner that, oh yeah, that is true, you're right. It's like a rose garden, but in a way you kind of looking for a conflict. And I think even from a biological or even evolutionary point of view, opposites are attracted to each other. So I don't exactly see where that fits into the actual picture.
Ah, okay. Because there's something about the creative process that's part of this idea of love, that you're actually creating something. So Diotima, she says, we all yearn to give birth in beauty, whether body or soul. So we have this, in other words, this natural instinct for immortality that we seek through reproduction. So we reproduce ourselves in
Well,
order to.
the question that rises here is that an illusion, or is that actually possible? Because or can you actually go out, seek for it and potentially find it, or does it have to hit you like a thunderstroke?
It doesn't have to hit you just like that. It can be a gradual process. But I think what's interesting about this model is that it's a process. Love is not a noun. Love is not an answer that you're looking for. Love is a process, and it happens best when it's with others. And so
Does it?
there I see
Yeah, go
parallel
ahead.
with philosophy itself. Philosophy is this gradual process of learning and sometimes unlearning ideas, of critically thinking about those ideas. Again, not just simply adopting, okay, this idea, this is the idea that I will use to live my life.
And
Rather,
that's
it's
part of self-skepticism as well at some point, because if it takes two, and we talked about that in class. I don't want to go all around it, but forgiving oneself maybe then nods into it. And I'm just going to go to a next question. What could be a misconception of love in that case? So what do you think, just that word love does, what is it not in all reality, or in your reality?
I think the most common misconception about love, I think, is also in Plato's Symposium, and it's Aristophanes' speech, again, which was written by Plato for a specific purpose.
Right.
And in Aristophanes' speech, he brings up this idea of soulmates, that we are destined to be with the person that we were made for, and that your romantic relationship is the most important possible thing in your life. Without romantic love, without eros, you are incomplete and will be miserable in despair of this world.
And
I think that's the biggest misconception.
And just to introduce the audience to that topic as well, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, the idea of Aristophanes, it's a very difficult word. We're not Greek, so it's very hard to spell, especially for me, is the idea that there was some type of a androgenic being, which is represented by a circle, that then was, like starting to become somewhat active with legs and arms and this and that, and then at some point split in two. And that's maybe where gender, or maybe even dualism came in place, right? Like the idea of dualism, that, well, we have separation, and that separation is maybe an attraction as well. So like leave and go, it's like breathing in and out, and in that case that would be that type of idea, right? But and now you say the misconception would be, and that's feeding off of this theory, is, well, since we were separated, we will have our counterpart that we lost down the line, and now it's on us to go and find it. Is that correct? More or less? Yeah, it's difficult. So
I think that's a really damaging idea. I think it's very harmful. It's done more harm than good in our lives, I think.
So I want to move on to symbolism. And since I don't just have it like right on, file, I'm just going to draw it. We all know the sign of love, which is, hope everybody can see
the heart.
A heart, yeah. Mm-hmm. So just drawing from this idea and looking at a circle, which would be the one, okay, I might have to hold it up like that, I'm sorry. Like this.
Okay.
Okay. Doesn't that look like a circle that has been hit on the head? Like here. And then it jumped down here, and then there. Like, what's your take on symbolism in love?
Oh, I think symbolism is so important. I've never looked at a heart and just seen someone with like basically who's been hit over the head. But I love that idea of like love is madness. Love seems like we've lost our mind. Plato definitely talks about love as a type of divine madness. I could go on about the symbolism of the heart, which I find to be really interesting.
Me too. I did a lot of research on it, and I just never found a satisfactory answer to that. But going to the symposium, going to Aristophanes, I think I said it right this time, Aristophanes, I think that has a really big relevance, because it's like it starts with a circle, it gets hit on the head, which could be a depressing part. and now you have two, almost two, but it's not a circle anymore. And of course, significantly, a wedding ring is a circle. So maybe that, there you go, or it can be a square, but it's based on a circle inside at least.
It's my squircle.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's round inside at least, so that's good enough. But the question is, does that mean that he wants to slash, I mean, Plato wants to slash the idea of the illusion of the perfect circle, which would be the perfect love, in terms of cutting it in half? I'm just asking.
I love that idea that, that idea of imperfection in love. There is no perfect love. Where if love is a process, right? Love is an action that mirrors the philosophical method. I think, philosophy is the pursuit of wisdom. I think there are some parallels with love. Love is the pursuit of the good life as well. It's very complicated. It does cause pain. In fact, I want to read a selection from Plato's Phaedrus. He says, I feel like a wild man, a shivering, shaking cormorant. My heart starts pounding and tears go streaming down my face. I've been pricked and stung by this man's philosophy and its fang-like grip on the young and talented souls, in which much is much fiercer than a snake, causing us to do and say the most amazing things. Love is painful. That awakening to that new way of seeing the world, of perceiving yourself, of respecting others, it is not easy. It is a long road ahead, and sometimes it feels like you're losing your mind, especially when you're kind of first experiencing it.
Right, but how many more times does one have to experience it in order to maybe realize it could be an illusion? And maybe that's just my point here, is maybe leading into honesty, which is, supposed to be the most noble quality within a relationship. Just be open about what you think, what you say, what you feel. We got language, that's the way we communicate as human beings. And throughout this process, it takes discipline and courage in order to make this communication, in order to, keep something together. I mean, it's kind of a rhetorical question. I want to let you maybe elaborate on this a little bit. Otherwise, yeah.
I'm thinking of a quotation from Augustine, who again talks a lot about, or uses this heart symbolism. And one of his most famous lines is, "My heart is restless until it rests in thee, O Lord." And his book, The Confessions, really is kind of a love letter to God and his reckoning with his conversion, and how long it took him to convert, and how it was a gradual process, but one that was authentic to him. His mom kept pushing him to convert. You have to convert to Christianity. You have to do this for me. And he was like, no, I'm going to do it in my own time, on my own terms. And there's something really important about that in terms of love. It's very difficult to be able to love someone, not because of what you're getting out of it, but because you truly want to know that person and you want the best for them.
So that is actually weaving into a question from Omar in our class that, I've been in the breakout room with him today, and we were talking about that. And it's the idea of the love of God and love per se as a concept. Well, there's only one God that you can love. Is there only one love that you can have, or can it be multiple loves? Can it be gradient, or is it just I like you very, very much because I love you, or just, I'm going to say something radical, and I've been saying that in class too. Just because I love my family doesn't mean that I want to make love to them, and that is still a concept. So where, and maybe we go into linguistics now, where is the absoluteness of love possible? Does it again have to be something that one can just only experience and not talk about it? Is it something that can be described in words that others that have not experienced it, to explain to them what it really is? Is it something you really have to experience in all totality, or can it be, explained in different levels?
I think the process of love itself is universal, but that doesn't mean that the way we love people is going to be universal. But that idea that love is an act, it's an act that considers the growth and benefit of the other person as well as yourself in this complicated, messy, not straightforward connection, relationship. That's one that you have with your friends, your family, your companion animals, with your romantic partners. But the way that we experience those different relationships is why we distinguish love between eros or erotic or romantic love versus philia, where philosophy comes from, the love of wisdom, but in terms of friendship and family, versus agapic love, which is love for either God, love for all humanity, love for existence itself. It's transcendent, it's love of something beyond.
So you
But
would say there is different ways of love, and it's not just one absolute or even sacred concept, right? That's what, yeah.
I think so. There's not one correct way to love, but there are these different paths. So the person who experiences agape love for God, but does not experience an erotic relationship, with another person, are they somehow missing out? I would say no, because they are still experiencing the very complicated and rich experience that gives our lives meaning, which is love. Now, does that take the same form for every person? Absolutely not.
Well, yeah, it's a subjective observation in all reality. I know we've been talking about Professor de Souza in our class as well, Puzzles of Love, which starts with asking yourself questions. What do I want? What do I need? Like, where is the big picture? Where is the small picture? How does this feeling fit into that category? So just like trying to analyze personal insights, expressions, feelings, whatever it is, and just trying to rationalize these, traits and try to make sense out of it. On the other hand, and we've been talking about that today earlier too, is ideas where people say, well, no, love is a construct, it's a thing. You either experience it or not. It's clear in its in its absolute. There's no way to describe it, and people take it for granted to just say, well, I love you, I love you, I love you, until a person just wants to stick with them like glue because they like to hear that. But it's not really what they get, that's just what they hear, and they take it as a concept by pushing back to the person that just says it because they know that their partner wants to hear it. But where is the true love? Like, we have so many artistic pieces, and if we have time, we will talk about that a little bit as well. So many songs about love, love, love. It seems to be the big word, but maybe there could be a misperception of that, and we just say like, well, I like this about you, I like that about you, but we already have a word for that, which is like about. But is that really love then? Like, I mean, that's where I'm struggling with.
I think love is something a little deeper and a little bit more challenging. Bell Hooks defines love as the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own and another person's spiritual growth. I think we could take the word spiritual out if that's triggering to some people, like, what do you mean by spiritual
Sure.
growth? But she just means the growth of the person in a meaningful and authentic way. And I think there's something really refreshing about that, because it's both about giving and receiving. It's about maintaining a kind of commitment to the hard work it takes to be in a relationship, whether it's romantic or family based or friendship or even animal.
Right.
It's you know, to truly have the benefit of another person at the heart of your relationship, while also kind of maintaining your own self identity. That's a pretty complicated task. There's also a
But
quote that I really like. Oh, go ahead.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I mean, the question is like, it seems to be selfish in a way, right? Because it says starts with inside, right? I mean, let's not go all the way back to Eastern philosophies in this case, but it seems to be something inside that has to act or react or discipline or work or whatever you want to call it. It seems to start inside with the man in the mirror, like the song that I started with my presentation. There seems to be something inside, but where does the other person come in when it's just about myself? It seems to be almost egoistic in a way.
Yeah, I don't like concepts of love that are just about self benefit, right? Like, oh, love is a transformative process. That's why I like the word dialectical, because there's more than one person that's involved here. The relationship between those two people itself is it's a unique entity. So it is about transformation, about expanding your world, about exploring ideas from different perspectives, which of course is best done when you're with others that have different perspectives. But it shouldn't just be about you becoming a better person. It should also involve helping the other
An
become
exchange.
an exchange where the other person becomes aware of themselves more through the relationship. That doesn't have to be in an aggressive way, right? Where you're
Right,
like, you
right,
need to change or I'm out. That's not
right.
healthy. That doesn't
I mean,
lead
it
to
could though, but that would be
transformation.
honest in all reality, right? You can say like, well, either you change or I'm out. That's pretty honest. Like, well, I'm not going to change. Okay, I'm out. That's a pretty honest like statement right there, in my opinion. Maybe it's, going beyond, but actually I'm really interested in the quote that you wanted to say, unless you wanted to say something about that.
No, I'd love to read this quote. It's by
Mhm.
David White. Um, and I just have a problem when love becomes instrumental in value. That means it's good because it gives you something in return. Um, I find that kind of habit of mind is also pretty harmful, because then everything that you experience has this instrumental value. What
It
can you
should be
do for me?
intrinsic. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
So this quote says, no matter the medicinal virtues of being a true friend or sustaining a long, close relationship with another, the ultimate touchstone of friendship is not improvement, neither of the other nor the self. The ultimate touchstone is witness, the privilege of having been seen by someone, and the equal privilege of being granted the sight of the essence of another.
That sounds like reciprocal altruism to me. That's evolutionary theory, right? Like now it's not, it's that is instrumental for me, because now you need a witness for something that you did in order to expand your progress, which is actually, it's still about progress. Don't you agree with? I mean, I don't know. That's just what I get out of this quote.
Well, if you think of love as um, this gradual transformation towards mutual recognition and self improvement and improvement of the other, what happens when someone is stuck and they're not able to improve? Does that mean you abandon the relationship or there's no longer love? Just being there for that person might be the best thing that you can do, not having to say, okay, let's problem solve. Like, what is this bad habit you have? How do you want to change it? How can you change it? It just becomes a matter of being there.
But then it's the motives will be progress, right? Helping the other person progressing in their stagnation. I mean, that would be my claim.
I think that's what we want out of relationships, right? We
Okay.
want to think that
Right.
that other people will come to some benefit by being in
Right.
relationship with us.
Instead of two rivers running against each other, it's two rivers merging and becoming a bigger flow of water into, I don't know, the ocean, like some, like some type of organic cycle, maybe, right?
Well, you said you didn't want to get into Buddhism, so I don't know,
Oh,
this
I'm
like
back in this.
oceans running together into
You see, my background, like, it's hard to get away from this. I don't know, like, I want to ask you something that you started with as well. It's the art of love, is the art of, I forgot exactly the way you termed it, but going with art. Art for me means artificial, means um, not not nature. It's like copying nature as good as possible. Good art is copying nature, almost as good as nature, but it's not getting there. So in that way, we're going back to aesthetics and looking, and it's of course back to language, because a piece of art can be language. Somebody is communicating something to somebody else that may understand a deeper meaning that you can't actually speak in words, which could be love, right? But it could be war as well. So for example, people would ask, like, how can a Picasso go over the counter for $50 million? Well, maybe you just don't understand that type of language, but the people that do, that's worth that money, no matter how money they have. If they have it, and even if it hurts in the wallet, they're willing to pay that because they understand the language. So that's the value of artistic values. And now weaving that into love again, art can represent something that shows a disaster, shows compassion, shows, any of the beautiful adjectives that we have. Um, but actually really just looking at it, feeling something, and getting the full potential out. Don't you think love in that, just to go back to the topic that we're talking about, is separate from artistic values? Like, you have nature, which is, love would be part of nature, or you got artistic, it's something man-made that is just conceptual. Does that question make sense, or do I have to narrow it down a little bit?
I can tell you what I'm hearing. And so what I'm hearing is is love something that is natural, right? Is it just a matter of instinct?
Right.
Because
that
we
would
know
be the
that
third step of Plato's letter too, that transcendent moment, the ultimate that nobody really knows. We passed these really difficult two first steps. Now we're at the third step, and that's just it. So yeah, that would be natural, transcendent, maybe even, I don't know.
So Plato says that that ultimate stage is when you recognize beauty itself without participating in an object, but just the concept of beauty. And what is interesting is that at some point, Diotima says, let's replace the word beauty with good, because that's what we mean anyway. And so it's this concept of goodness itself, or the good in terms of like Platonic theory and the Platonic theory of the forms.
Right.
But I wanted to, where did I want to go with this? So this idea, like, is is love something like natural? Is it just an experience that we have, but we have no control over? So we know that even animals do experience what we call love in terms of the release of oxytocin, that feeling of intimacy and closeness that you have when something good is happening, like a hug. So animals experience that. But what do humans experience? Is there an added level to that? And I would say yes. And that is the ability to reflect about love, to consent, to certain concepts of love, to be aware of how one loves and how one has been loved in the past, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and what you want to shape into your life, your existence, which in itself is a kind of art, the art of sculpting who you are from what has been done to you, from what is around you, things that maybe you didn't have control over. So I think there is something liberating when one is able to see love as an art, as a craft that involves work, that involves awareness.
That very interesting, and you almost convinced me to believe you. I think I have to think about this a little bit. Yeah, I mean, that's why we asking questions, and that's how we started. Even Plato did his Socratic dialogues, just to ask a question, trying to find out about yourself, because if you just, not asking questions, like how can you learn? I mean, that, if everybody just has it all figured out in his head, that would be beautiful, and that's very noble, but like it needs probably more than that. I don't know. I think we are already like pretty close to like half an hour. We don't want to keep that too long. Is there something that you would like to add before I ask my last question, which will be an easy one? Can I add something? Yeah, go ahead.
I will end it from a quotation from Plato's Phaedrus, where he says, "Devote your life to love through philosophical discussions." Because eros, the idea of erotic love, is very similar to the Greek verb to ask questions, eroton.
That's what we're doing. Yeah, that's beautiful. And, that's weaving perfectly into my last question, which is, since you're my professor, do you have a question for me? That's literally my last question. That's just perfect.
I would like to ask you, in this semester where we've been virtual and we haven't actually been able to meet and discuss ideas of love together, what has it been like for you to take this class, Philosophy of Love, this semester?
That's very interesting. It's actually a question that was on my questionnaire as well. Of course, it's been more than a pleasure. It's been very rewarding as well. It's been very vivid, even though it's a virtual insanity in all reality. So like, how can you, talk about love over a screen? I might have to bounce that question quickly back to you, because like I am, again, like it's been, I shouldn't say that because maybe other professors will watch that too, but it's been probably the best class. It's the best thing that happened to me in this semester, if not even in the whole distance learning situation. And yeah, just very personal, rewarding, and brightening up not only a day but a whole week until the next week. So that's is that a good enough question, like a good enough answer? Because can I ask you, is there a difference to teaching this class in virtually compared to in person? Because that really was on my board too, but since you asked me that question, I have to ask that question.
Fair enough. I didn't know. I thought it would be impossible. I thought that, what, I don't know if this is the right time to teach this class. I've never taught this class in person, so there was some fear that it would fail, and that.
I mean, you mean you never taught that class in virtual, right? You did.
And virtually, yeah.
Right. You taught that class in person, right?
Oh yeah, many times.
Yeah, right. No, because I thought I heard you say, yeah, okay.
I never taught the class virtually,
right.
And I didn't know how to do it. I thought I was having a lot of, I was just worried, and I was having self-doubt that I wouldn't be able to teach this class in a way that I have very high expectations for myself as a teacher. It's a big responsibility. And I did experience some self-doubt and thought like, this is, I can't do this. But just like the ladder of love, each time I teach a class, it's like I'm moving up the ladder. I'm learning so much. And I was able to let go of those fears by being supported by people like you, Sandro, who kept encouraging me, and people like Sherry, and people like my other friends who were like, you can do this. It's going to be great. Just rethink and
it really
reconfigure.
was great. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, I mean, that was just a pure pleasure to be in this class. But is there a difference between in-person versus like, especially with such a personal topic?
It always gets a little personal in this class. I
But
think
is it
that
different to the in-person classes? Was it like for you as an experience? Because I don't know, I only took that class in virtually, which was again like a blessing. But where is the difference there? Because I think that could be an interesting point. I know we already over time, but yeah.
I'm very protective of my students, you know, so one thing that was like, I want to open up a space where people can talk about their personal lives, their lived experiences, some, you know, moments of enlightenment or illumination. So in the last time I taught this class, abuse came up a lot, but I was sitting in a circle with the students and I could read their faces. And there were times where I knew it was getting too close to home. And so I pulled it back. And there were times where the students, I felt like they just needed space to talk. And so I would let them talk. It was hard to gauge that because I could not see all of your faces. And I did want to protect each of you and give each of you the experience that you deserve in a college class. So that's where I was like, I hope everyone got something out of the class. I hope it wasn't too personal or too impersonal. But I think me kind of stepping back and being attentive to your needs, I think that I learned how to do that in the virtual setting through
Absolutely,
trial
yeah.
and error.
And just to summarize this, I think that might be even somewhat of a good setting, because if somebody does feel uncomfortable, they might be, you know, like if you feel uncomfortable, you might learn something and you might go inside yourself. And being at home in a safe environment and not just being exposed to everybody, that might just really help that process from that quick separation in order to, you know, just have it sunk in and then, you know, actually really getting something out of that class. So I'm very happy that we had that class. I'm even more happy we had this interview. Thank you so much. That was
Thank
great.
you, Sandro.
And yeah, we're gonna say thanks for everybody that is still listening to this. And I'm gonna stop the recording right now.
Thank you so much.